يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله عز وجل وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدع وكل بدعة دلالة وكل دلالة في النار وبعد. We welcome the dear brothers and sisters to another lesson from the lessons of the explanation of Kitab at-Tawheed from the great book al-Qawl al-Mufid ala Kitab at-Tawheed by our Shaykh Imam al-Faqih al-Muhaddith Shaykh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala, in his explanation of the book Kitab at-Tawheed. And this is our 21st lesson on the 3rd of Dhul Qa'dah in the year 1440 al-Hijrah, corresponding to the 6th of July 2019. And we're continuing with chapter 6. Chapter 6, which is the chapter Bab Tafsir at-Tawheed, the explanation of Tawheed, Tafsir at-Tawheed, wa shahadat an la ilaha illallah, and the testification of la ilaha illallah, that there is none worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, who has no partners. So this chapter is an explanation or details or any extra points which were not covered in the first 5 chapters, or a consolidation of those points of the first five chapters. So a person has an in-depth understanding of Tawheed, so he can continue understanding the rest of the chapters of this book, Kitab at-Tawheed. And that's why the great Imam Muhammad bin Abdul-Wahhāb brought this chapter, since this first 6 chapters, like we mentioned before, are the foundation for the rest of the book. So we began last week with the first ayah, and now we are continuing with the next ayah, the second ayah in this book. And the second ayah is from the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ وَقَوْمِهِ, that remember when Ibrahim said to his father and his people, إِنَّنِي بَرَاءٌ, indeed I am free, مِمَّا تَعْبُدُونَ, from what you worship, free from what you worship, إِلَّا الَّذِي فَتَرَنِي, except for the one who created me, فَإِنَّهُ سَيَهْدِينَ, indeed he will guide me. Okay, indeed he will guide me. So here Muhammad Abdul-Wahhāb brings this verse, this ayah in the Quran, as a very important foundation for the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is the saying of Ibrahim, that he said to his father and to his people, I'm free from what you worship. I'm free from these idols and these statues and these other things that you take along with Allah or besides Allah that you worship. I'm free from that. I don't do that. I do not worship what you worship. So our Shaykh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah, he said, in the explanation of this ayah, he says, Bara'un, yani being free from. It is being free from, yani that indeed he is free completely from what you worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, except the one who created me. And the Shaykh said that Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam was qawi, was strong regarding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regarding the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was strong in this. Okay. And he openly said this to his people and his father. He openly said this to the people and to his father. Now here, there's a few other benefits that Shaykh Uthaymeen brings. And from these benefits, one of them is that he mentions in this place, in another place as well, that here we find Ibrahim alayhi salam freeing himself from that which they worship. Okay, he didn't say, yeah, and this is what some of the scholars mentioned. He didn't say, "I'm free from you, what you worship. I'm free from you people," even though we know that we have to be free from the people who worship other than Allah, from the mushrikeen. Okay, free from them as well. That we have an allegiance, yeah, a loyalty to the people who worship Allah alone, and we have a separation from those who worship someone along with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So notice here that he didn't say, "I'm free from you, my father and my people," but he used wisdom in giving da'wah to the people. So he said, "I am free from what you worship, those things that you worship. I'm not free from you." He didn't say that, because da'wah, when you're giving da'wah to people, it has stages. It has levels. So if, for example, a person starts practicing the Tawheed, starts learning about Tawheed, and starts learning about the Sunnah, the first thing he does is not break away from his parents or from his family or from his friends or anything like that. Of course, unless they're influencing in bad things and evil things. But he doesn't break away from them. He doesn't break away from his parents. He doesn't break away from his relatives. Okay? He doesn't break away from them. Yes, he becomes firm on Tawheed. He learns his Tawheed. But he doesn't break away from them. That's why we find this wisdom from Ibrahim alayhi salam. He didn't break away from his father and from his people until the time was correct, or the time was right for him to do that. So we find from a lot of our younger brothers and sisters who become practicing in the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, they might have read a few points here and there. They haven't understood them, and they start applying them to their parents. It could be Muslim parents, but they're not practicing Islam, or they're not aware of Tawheed, they're not aware of Sunnah, they're not aware of Shirk. Okay, they haven't been educated in this. So we find this young brother is very enthusiastic. He wants to change the situation. He wants to change the evil, as he presumes it, and he wants to change it. So he hastens to change it. Rather, he has to use wisdom. He has to use wisdom in dealing with each situation. So, for example, a person says, "Well, in my house, we've got ayat, like a picture frame, or some some of these cloths or rug with an ayah written on it, and the parents put it on the wall because they see it as something religious. They see, oh, this is good, an ayah of the Quran as a reminder, and these type of things." So the brother comes along, he says, "This is evil, haram, it's not allowed," and he wants to tear it down, and he wants to stop them from doing this evil. Yeah, we have to understand. Firstly, our parents or our relatives who have these things, do they know about Tawheed? Do they know about Sunnah? Do they know about the importance of these things? Rather than coming down and tearing it down, you have to make them understand. Use wisdom. Because automatically they're going to say, "Who are you? A few days ago you were in the nightclub, and now you're telling me about these. I can't have ayat on the wall, and these are ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." Yes, we know that the Salaf didn't practice this. We as Sunni Salafi, we know this is not something from the practice of the Salaf. But we have to use wisdom when we're dealing with it. So that's why we find from our prophets that they used wisdom in conveying the da'wah. So Ibrahim alayhi salam said, "Innani bara'un mimma ta'budun." I am free from what you worship. I am free from what you worship, except for the one who created me, brought me into existence. So the Shaykh says, this is what Ibrahim alayhi salam said. And he said, ta'budun, that which you worship. So here the Shaykh says, the ibadah here is submission, and it is humbling oneself. Because there were people in his nation, on his people, they were from his people who used to worship idols, and they were from them who used to worship the sun, the moon, and stars. So here, Ibrahim alayhi salam is making it clear ta'budun, that you humble yourself or submit to, give submission to these type of things. Then he says, illa alladhi fatarani, except for the one who created me. So here the scholars bring a very nice point in all the explanations, where they connect this ayah to the chapter heading, Tafsir wa Shahada an la ilaha illallah. That this is a combining between negating and affirmation. We spoke about this before as well, that in the whole of the deen there is negation and affirmation. So we negate that anyone has the right to be worshipped, but we affirm that Allah is the one who has the right to be worshipped. So the nafi here, the negation, is bara'un mimma ta'budun. Bara'un mimma ta'budun. I'm free from what you worship. Idols, Isa alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, angels, the mother of Isa alayhi salam. We are free from what you worship. Okay, so we're negating that. It's a negation. And then the Shaykh says, al-ithbat wal-ithbat, yani affirmation, illa alladhi fatarani, except for the one who created me. Okay, who created me. So the Shaykh says, so this shows that Tawheed cannot be complete except by disbelieving in that which is other than Allah, that which is with other than Allah, and the Iman has to be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. You have to have Iman with Allah, believing on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So it means that we don't rely upon like, for example, when we say something, or when some of these people, they say touch wood. They say touch wood. When they want something good or whatever, they say touch wood. This is a practice amongst the people. They rely upon that sort of that phrase as a means of protection. Okay, so we disbelieve in that. We reject that. We say no. This is a piece of wood, man. It can't do anything to you. Yeah. Obviously, they use it as a phrase to mean towards the cross or something wooden. Yeah. So, but we say no. This is something, I don't believe in this. It's a piece of wood. I believe in a creator. Okay. So it shows us that we disbelieve in that, but we have Iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. We have Iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's negation, negating that people, touch wood and these type of things, cross your fingers and, that type of superstitious stuff. And we affirm that I trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this point of trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a very, very important point. Very, very important point. Because what happens with us humans in this worldly life, we become reliant upon certain things and people. Certain things and people. We become so reliant upon them that our true tawakkul, true reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala falters or becomes weak. We're not saying that people become mushrikeen. Don't misunderstand that. See, he's got weak tawakkul, so he's a mushrik. La. We're not talking about that. We're talking about weakness in perfecting that reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the hearts of the believers become tranquil. The remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our Iman and our tawakkul become stronger. So relying upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a very, very important point. So here the Shaykh al-Uthaymeen mentions, this indicates, this ayah, إِلَّا الَّذِي فَتَرَنِي, except for the one who created me, indicates that the Tawheed cannot be complete except by negating or disbelieving in other than Allah and having Iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is, the Shaykh says, the same as the ayah in the Quran, فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ. Okay, whoever disbelieves in Taghut is that everything that is worshipped other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whoever disbelieves in that, وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ, and he believes in Allah. So negation and affirmation. Negating belief in Taghut, in other than Allah, idols, these type of things, and believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى. So whoever does this, then he has held on to a strong hold, a strong matter. فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى. Even in the Arabic language, just reading these words, they're so strong in themselves. Urwa, wuthqa, strong meaning, strong words. You're holding on to, whoever does that, who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and negates that other stuff, then he has held on to a strong handhold. Then the Shaykh says, and these people would worship Allah and they would worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he goes on to mention, and this is what we find in some of these Islamic lands, that somebody, he prays and he gives zakat and he fasts and he performs hajj, and along with that they go to, or these people, they go to graves and they make sajda to these graves and they make ruku' to these graves. The Shaykh said, فَهُمْ kuffar, they are disbelievers, غير موحدين, they are not those who are upon Tawheed. They are not upon Tawheed. Now the Shaykh is mentioning this generally, generally. But specifically, there are different circumstances. Like these people who do this type of stuff, most of them actually believe that, that they should, or that this inmate of the grave, the deceased, can actually help them. So there is a distinction between believing and acting on it. Believing and acting on it. And the Shaykh said, from these people, none of the actions will be accepted. And this action of theirs, making sajda and ruku', it will not be accepted. And this is the most dangerous that a person or Islamic communities can be upon. Islamic communities can be upon. Because these people disbelieving in other than Allah is not, they don't regard it as anything. The negation of worship other than Allah, or negation of associating partners with Allah, they don't regard it as anything. And this is from their ignorance, and this is from their negligence of their scholars. Because the Shaykh said, because an ignorant person, a general person, a common folk, does not take except from his scholar. But however, some people, when we seek refuge with Allah, that a person can be a scholar of the dawla, a scholar of the country, a scholar of the government, and not a scholar for the millah, for the ummah of the Muslims. So here the Shaykh is making the distinction between those type of people that teach shirk and teach evil, these type of matters. So Allah's refugees saw that some of these people that advise the people to go to graves and teach the people to go to graves and these type of things, there could be that these people are following their governments, like some of the ignorant ministries in Islam, some Muslim governments. You'll find that they'll even encourage people to go to graves and these type of things. And this is well known amongst some of the Asian countries that some of the ministries, the people who run these Islamic ministries, Ministry of Islamic Affairs, you'll find that they're so ignorant about Tawheed that they fall into shirk, and they encourage and they promote shirk. Then the Shaykh goes on to say that that this statement of Ibrahim alayhi salam is not free from, it has two major points. Okay, there are two benefits to this. When he said, "Illa alladhi fatarani," okay, except for the one who created me, yani except Allah. Here, Shaykh al-Uthaymeen brings a nice benefit. He says, the first is an indication to the reason for singling out Allah alone for worship. Yeah, you see the point here. The point here, Ibrahim alayhi salam said, "I'm free from what you worship." That could be sufficient. Could be sufficient to free himself from those people. I'm free from what you worship. But he brought illa, yani an exception. Exception, illa alladhi fatarani, except for the one who created me. So this is a reason, an indication to the reason for singling out Allah alone for worship. The Shaykh said, because just as he alone creates, he said, illa alladhi fatarani, except for the one who created me, then it is obligatory that he alone is singled out with worship. Yeah, see the point here, that Allah is the one who created me, not those things that you worship. Allah alone is the one who created me, so He is the one ya'budun. And you'll find, subhanallah, that to us, when we're reading it, to us common folk, when we read these ayat, yeah, I'm free from that which you worship, except for the one who created me. Yani, very simple, straightforward. But the scholars, they bring out some excellent, beautiful gems from these ayat and these explanations from the tafsir of the people before us, from the Salaf, the tafsir of the Salaf before us regarding this. Yeah, because here the Shaykh mentioned that just because that the worship is illa alladhi fatarani. Why would he mention this? Yani, because since Allah alone is the one who creates, He is the one alone is singled out for worship. And the second, then the Shaykh al-Uthaymeen mentioned, the second is an indication to the nullification of worship of idols. An indication to the nullification of worship of idols, because they did not create you so that you worship them. So how can you worship them? Therefore, in this understanding of Tawheed is the knowledge between negation and affirmation. And this is the complete eloquence in the expression of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Why Ibrahim alayhi salam used this expression is the complete eloquence in dealing with, making it comprehensive. The Shaykh goes on, also the benefit from this hadith is that Tawheed cannot occur with the worship of someone along with Allah. Our worship has to be purely for the sake of Allah. Yani sincerity. Yeah, don't think it's just, worship in the ibadah sense, but sincerity. Yeah, also sincerity, because sincerity is the foundation. The sincerity is the foundation for our Tawheed. That we're doing it purely for Allah's sake. We're not doing it to show off. We're not doing it to gather numbers. We're not doing it so, look at me, everybody look at me, I'm in charge, I'm the one who's doing everything. We're not doing it for that. Not at all. So we correct our actions, not just our sincerity, we correct our actions in case we fall into that. In case we fall into doing it for other than Allah's sake, by our actions as well, then we check ourselves, make muhasabah. We take account of ourselves and say, am I doing this purely for Allah's sake? And is my correct action actually correct in that? Because sometimes, and this is what occurred before in England, in the UK, when we first began giving da'wah and learning the deen and stuff, where we started falling short. Yeah, and it was because of the lack of sincerity. Obviously, the lack of knowledge of Tawheed caused the lack of sincerity amongst some of our brothers there. And they placed themselves in charge of, say, the da'wah, and formed an organization and became so arrogant that they wouldn't listen to advice. They wouldn't listen to advice. And they turned the da'wah over there at that time into a hizb. I'm talking, this is before 1990. Yeah? Before 1990 or the early 1990s. Before 1990. Where the brothers I was with, the brother in charge, he became so arrogant due to the lack of, correcting his sincerity, his actions. So he became such that he was, became such in his actions that he wanted to take responsibility and take control of the da'wah. And then he turned it into a hizb, into a party, and he turned and became looking for people to push him up. So he started going to the Hizbiyun, those who were not Salafi, to look for promotion, look for leadership. And this was a severe mistake. Severe mistake. First, in the sincerity to Allah Azza wa Jal of the da'wah. Secondly, in the actions which resulted of this lack of sincerity. So when we talk about Tawheed, don't think it's just, worshipping idols and these type of things. No, even sincerity, the foundation of the Tawheed, it has to be correct. It has to be correct. It has to be sincerely for Allah's sake. And the actions that result from that that sincerity have to be correct. So each and every one of us has to check our own selves, take our own account. Am I dealing with my brothers correctly? Am I dealing with my brothers correctly? Am I dealing in a way that we are cooperating together for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Not that I want to become the leader, not that I want position. Rather, the Salaf used to run away from authority and run away from being placed into leadership. They would rush away from it. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radhiallahu anhu, the next day after he had become Khalifa, he was appointed Khalifa of the Muslims after the passing away of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Bakr radhiallahu anhu, the best of creation after the Prophets, he went out in the morning. He said, I want to. The people saw him gathering these things to go out, and they said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to the marketplaces to do business. They said, what are you doing? We need you to run the affairs of the Muslims, the community of Muslims, the Ummah. He said, well, I need to feed my children, so I'm going out to do this. Look at the sincerity. Look at the sincerity. He didn't want leadership. He didn't want that position, but Allah placed him in that position. But he was also going to go and feed his family. He wasn't going to sit down and rely upon handouts from the government or anything like this. But people said, no, we need you for a more important thing. And we will appoint for you a certain portion of what you need for your family. Look at the sincerity of Abu Bakr radhiallahu anhu in his Tawheed, reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sincerity. So we have to be really careful, ya ikhwan, especially in new communities, especially their brothers in Brisbane. We have to be very careful of how we take our steps forward and regarding the da'wah, that we are together, and we are bringing the brothers closer together, and trying to avoid any form of disagreement, trying to avoid any form where the shaitan will come and try to split up the ranks of the Salafis and of the Sunnis and the Muslims, splitting up their ranks. It takes many, many years to establish a foundation. It takes many years. And really, dear brothers and Muslim communities, Salafi communities around the world, they should learn from our mistakes. When we first tried to establish the Da'waatus Salafiyyah and the Da'wah of the Sunnah, and learn from those type of mistakes. And inshallah, maybe if Allah blesses us, that we can do a separate lesson regarding those points. So here, Shaykh al-Uthaymeen mentions that the people in regards to this are of three types, yani this worship. One type who only worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, it divides up this ikhlas and the levels of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said there's a type who only worship Allah, a type who only worship other than Allah, and a type who worship someone along with Allah. And then he said only the first type are the muwahhid, he who singles out Allah alone with worship. Then we come quickly to the next verse, next ayah, which Muhammad ibn Abdul-Wahhāb rahimahullah ta'ala brings, and it is the ayah from Surah Tawbah, ayah 31, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم, that they took their monks and their rabbis, and monks, أربابا من دون الله, as lords to be worshipped other than Allah. And the ayah continues, وَالْمَسِيحِ ibn Maryam. I mean, that is the shahid that Muhammad ibn Wahhab rahimahullah brought, but the ayah continues, وَالْمَسِيحِ ibn Maryam. And they took along as well Isa ibn Maryam. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا إِلَهًا وَاحِدًا. And they were not ordered except to worship one Lord, one creator, one deity. La ilaha illahu, and there is no deity worthy of worship except him. Subhanahu amma yushrikun. Far is he from imperfection, or far is he from what they associate as partners. Okay, and this is a very, very important ayah, and a very fundamental ayah in the understanding of Tawheed. Now this ayah, Muhammad ibn Abdul-Wahhāb rahimahullah actually brings a whole chapter later on, really further down in the book, a whole chapter with this, with an explanation of this ayah, or bringing the proofs with this ayah this ayah of regarding the taking for worship other than Allah, taking the monks and rabbis and monks as for worship other than Allah. He brings a whole chapter regarding this. But we'll look into this verse now as well, and we'll cover it later on, because it's way further down in the book. So here, the whole ayah is, they, the Jews and Christians, take their rabbis and their monks to be their lords besides Allah, meaning by obeying them in things which they made lawful or unlawful according to their own desires without being ordered by Allah. And they also took as their Lord the al-Masih, yani Isa alayhi salam, son of Maryam, while they, the Jews and Christians, were commanded in the Torah and the Injil to worship none but Allah. La ilaha illahu, none have the right to be worshipped but He. Praise and glory be to Him. Far above is He from having partners they associate with Him. Okay, so this is Surah Tawbah, ayah 31. Now there's a story behind this ayah. There is a story, a situation that occurred about this ayah, and that's why when we look at the tafsir explanations of ayat, we go back to a subject which is called asbab al-nuzul, reasons for revelation. Asbab al-nuzul. Why did this ayah occur? Or when did it, or when, or where, or how? Why did this ayah occur? And we find this also with the hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it shows us how beautifully our religion has been preserved. Our religion has been preserved by knowing where certain ayat and hadith occurred, or why, or these type of things. So there's a story behind this ayah. The story behind this ayah is from Adi ibn Hatim. Adi ibn Hatim, radiyallahu anhu. Adi ibn Hatim, his father was very, very, very famous, but he wasn't a Muslim, and he died not as a Muslim. Okay? He was Hatim al-Tayy, his name is known as Hatim al-Tayy, and he was very famous in Arab history for being hospitable. You know, whenever they bring a similitude or an example of hospitality, they say he's like Hatim al-Tayy, yani Hatim from Ta'if. Yeah, if you find somebody who's generous, yeah, you say, oh, this is Hatim. This is what the Arabs mention in their speech. Yeah? Oh, he's like Hatim, because Hatim was so generous that whenever he would have guests, yani he would slaughter an animal, you know, cook the meat of that animal, okay? And when the bells rang, you know, that, oh, such and such is coming, the camels knew that one of them was going to be slaughtered, yani, because they started fidgeting and moving around. Hatim al-Tayy from Ta'if, he was so generous that his cooking pots, you needed to stand on a ladder the size of a horse. Yeah, it had to be that high to stand upon that to stir the pots of cooking pots of Hatim of Hatim. That's how generous he was. Allah gave him that generosity, but unfortunately, he did not accept Islam. However, his son Adi ibn Hatim accepted Islam, and he was a Christian. So Adi ibn Hatim said, I came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and around my neck was a gold cross. He was a Christian, and he had a cross around his neck. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to me, Ya Adi, itrah hadha al-wathan, yani throw this idol away. Yeah, it could have been that he was new to Islam and he didn't know, and he became Muslim, and the Prophet ﷺ saw this cross and he wore this cross thinking nothing of it. Oh, Adi, throw away this idol. Then Adi said, I heard him recite from Surah Bara, Surah Tawbah. They, the Jews and Christians, took their rabbis and monks to be their lords beside Allah. So I said, indeed, we do not worship them. And Adi is saying to the Prophet ﷺ, we didn't worship them. Look at the understanding. Now look at the understanding. Worship meaning sajda, ruku, calling upon them, these type of things. The Prophet ﷺ said, indeed the people never used to worship them. However, يعني لم يكونوا يعبدونهم, they didn't worship them like that. He said, however, when the rabbis and monks made matters permissible, the people took them to be permissible. And when they prohibited matters, they took them to be prohibited. Then that is worship of them. Okay? That is worship of them. Okay? So this is the matter. This is what this aspect of worship is. That when the rabbis and monks, they made matters permissible. They said such and such is halal. You can do this. Such and such is prohibited. Without recourse to their books or changing their books, and you accepted that, then this is a matter of what? This is worship of them. Because only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make something halal. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make something haram. So this is worship of them. And this is collected by Bukhari in Tarikh and Tirmidhi in Sunan and many other. These have many chains, and it's Hasan, insha'Allah ta'ala, according to Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah. Okay, so this is the story behind this hadith, and this is taken from Silsila Sahihah. One of the scholars of tafsir, he spoke about this ayah, and he said this ayah is a warning against many of the deviant sects who leave the book of Allah, the Most High, and the sunnah of his Prophet ﷺ for the speech of their scholars and leaders. The truth has more of a right to be followed. So, whenever truth appears, it becomes obligatory upon the Muslim to follow him, even if the ijtihad of the one whom he blindly follows says he is wrong. says he is wrong. Okay, so this tells us the story behind this ayah, where these people, when they took, where the Prophet ﷺ explained how taking what the rabbis and monks made halal and haram is actual worship of them. We'll finish there today with that, inshallah. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us or gives us sincerity in our hearts and in our actions, and makes us benefit from knowledge which is beneficial, and keeps us away from that knowledge which is not beneficial. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to unite the hearts of the Muslims and the people on Sunnah and Salafiyyah everywhere, and Allah guide us to the right path. Subhanakallahumma wa jazakumullahu khair for listening. May Allah reward the brothers and sisters who organize these lessons. Jazakumullahu khairan. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illallah anta astaghfiruka wa atubu